Hey guys, it's Charles back with another prospect breakdown. This time we're going to look at Robert Nkemdiche, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss in the first half of his game versus Alabama. He's a guy who flashes, or not even flashes, because he has elite athleticism for the position. When the combine comes around and pro days come around, I expect him to be a guy that will test in the upper echelon of guys in previous years. So, like Ndamukong Suh, Gerald McCoy, he's going to test in that area of, excuse me, of freak athleticism, really. And when you watch him play, it's very evident that he is an elite, explosive athlete, but he's not as polished as you would expect out of, say, a top five pick where he's getting projected a lot right now. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was a defensive end coming out of high school, and they bumped him down to defensive tackle his sophomore year, I believe. And the transition from defensive end to defensive tackle is a tough one because when you're on the end, you have a little bit more time to react, plan things, and execute than you do on the interior. Eric Stoner, he made the comparison that, playing on the end is kind of like being in the ballet, while playing on the interior is more like being a mosh pit. And it's very evident when you watch the game tape that Nkemdiche is a player that is still growing a lot, and he does go through these growing pains, and he still is kind of growing to that body that Ole Miss is, kind of thrust upon him because he came in as a 260-pound defensive end, and now he's, around 290, 295, 300 in that area. Excuse me. And you can see that he's not he still doesn't have the strength that you'd expect a classic three technique to have. I thought his game versus Alabama was an interesting one because he did have some really nice plays where you do see the full potential that he possesses, but he does have some ugly plays that plagued him in his sophomore year. So we're going to go through the game tape of the first half in half speed just to kind of get a feel of the player that he is. We're not going to go through the full game because this draft breakdown video is 16 minutes and 36 seconds, and quite frankly, I just don't want to do all that. So we're going to go through the first half, and here's Robert Nkemdiche versus Alabama. He's lined up in three technique almost all the time just to try to isolate him in one-on-one situations against guards and really get really get a chance to showcase athleticism and get into the backfield and cause havoc. So here we go. You see him lined up in the three technique. Left hand in the dirt, and right off the bat, technique issue. So let's run that back. Look how he comes out of his stance. Ball snapped. You can see it based off that first step. He really is just an explosive athlete. Look where he is compared to the entire rest of the D line. But this also serves as a detriment to him because look at where his head is facing compared to the offensive lineman and the defensive lineman, and even like the second level players and the defensive backs. Everyone is looking up at the man above them, at the man in front of them. Everyone's looking up, trying to read the play, where it's going. Offensive linemen are trying to read where the defensive linemen are going. Defensive linemen are trying to read where the offensive linemen are going. But Nkemdiche, while his burst off the line is excellent, and it does showcase his athleticism, his head is down. He's not looking at literally the entire line, making movement steps to the left. And when your head is down, it's dumb football cliche, or not even dumb football cliche because it's true. You can't attack what you can't see. And this is a classic case of Nkemdiche literally not seeing anything before um, before he strikes the offensive lineman. He gets off the ball so fast, but his head's down. He's already reached by the center, and he's just not in a position to make the play. So that's an example of you seeing the athleticism, but you see the athleticism, but you also see how raw he is. Here he's lined up a 3 technique again over the right guard. Head down out of his stance again. You can look, his head is facing at the dirt. The guard's head is facing at him. So he's not even looking at what he's striking at. And then you can see kind of the lack of strength that he does display at times. He doesn't really shoot his hands because he can't see what he's hitting. Stands straight up, gets his chest bullied into by the guard, falls down. And that's where you see the lack of strength, the lack of technique. And this is kind of a lack of core strength. To not be able to hold your balance right here, even if the play is going away from you, it's still something you need to be ready for, because while it was a play action look, you have to be prepared for Alabama to come downhill hard with their backs, like Derrick Henry and Kenyon Drake. That power play is something that's a big staple in their playbook. And if you're falling down on the play action, then that's an indicator that, maybe he can't take on these double teams and we can just run right at him. And right now, taking on double teams is something that he really struggles with. And we'll see a little bit more examples as we move on through the first half. And while this is an impressive display of power, it definitely is. Look, his technique was off on this play. Lined up in the 3 technique as usual. And when you're playing the 3 technique, you have a natural advantage with your angles. You want to own this B gap right here in between the center and the guard, or not the center and the guard, excuse me, the tackle and the guard. That's your gap, and by lining up on the outside shoulder of the guard, you have a natural advantage. And when you're as athletic, as explosive as Nkemdiche is, there's no reason for you really to get bullied by anybody in college that you face against, especially if you're going to be touted as a top 5 pick. So his head needs to be on the outside shoulder of this guard. And look, once again, he's not looking at the offensive lineman. He's not reacting to the offensive line. It's all full go, full speed ahead. I'm just going to try to burst off this ball and see if I can wreak havoc in the backfield. And while it does produce some pretty plays, you do get plays like this where, the burst in athleticism is just it's prevalent. He's shooting out of his stance before anybody else is even moving, really. And this is good when you combine the ability to jump the snap and you have freakish athleticism. You're going to make a lot of splash plays, even with some shoddy technique. But look where his head ends up. It's supposed to be on the outside shoulder of the guard so he can control that gap, but he's on the inside. And if you're lining up on the inside, one, you've lost control of your run fit, and 2, you make it easy. You're making a natural double team on an inside zone play for the center. So now the center can come, he can knock you off balance, and he's got an easy path to the linebacker. And the linebacker made a nice play in there to jump inside. But but if you don't play your gap correctly, you make things more difficult on the whole defense, because with the defensive line, you're the first wave of defense. And it's crazy because he's such a good athlete, and you can see the power in his lower body and his hands as he's able to, I mean, from a place where he has bad technique, he is in a position where that guard should be driving him off the ball. Look at the pad leverage difference between the guard and him. Look at where the guard's helmet is compared to his helmet. Shoulder pads, everything. And he's in a position where he's catching the guard because he doesn't have his hands extended. The guard is in his chest, but he does have the upper body explosion to just kind of toss that guard aside. And when you see plays like that, you go, okay, this guy, he's close. He has the athleticism, but he's not there yet. Here he's lined up against three tech again, and he's taking on a double team, and he just gets kind of shoved right out of the way. And taking as a defensive tackle, especially playing three technique, taking on double teams is a little bit of an instinctual thing. And again, you can see he doesn't play with great angles or great leverage. Heads below, heads on the wrong side, or heads above the guard. His helmet's on the wrong side of the guard, making the double team extremely easy for the center. But taking on double teams is an instinctual thing. And in his second year playing defensive tackle, it's probably not something he's going to have developed yet. I mean, to a great degree. But you have to know what the offensive schemes are doing, what they're doing in relation to you, and what they do in relation to the players around you. So he has to understand that in these formations that Alabama is running, where they run their power downhill, you have to be expecting this. And like we saw before, on the first or second play, while it was a play action, on the second play of the game, you can see that he's not equipped to handle these double teams. So they're going to run it back and just move him out the way, just bulldoze him. And if you don't have these instincts to recognize when the offensive line is going to run certain plays, that's going to serve as a detriment to you, especially if you're not already a polished player, which he definitely is not. And here we go. Again, I mean, this is where he's going to play three technique, so don't need to point out at every time. And look at where his head is. And this is, I'm not saying that he's going to suffer a catastrophic injury or anything, but this is almost dangerous right here. He's coming out with his head completely down, not looking at anything. He doesn't know where the ball is, where the guard is, and he just gets leveled by the center. And that's just poor, sloppy technique. It's clear that he doesn't really know what he's doing as an interior player, especially when you see plays like this, where you're coming out with your head completely looking down and you just get dominated by really both players. And you can avoid that by looking up, hitting what you see, protecting your neck, and being ready to take plays coming downhill at you. And this is much better in terms of play recognition. He's looking up at the offensive lineman, and what happens? He sees the line moving left, so he moves in that direction, performs a nice rip move, and you can see the athleticism to get upfield through contact, and just kind of try to disrupt that three-step drop however best you can. And that's just, I mean, this isn't how you want to play it, but let's just admire the athleticism and get off here. Let's, I mean, he's already won he's already almost a yard upfield when the ball snapped. And this isn't how you want to play these back blocks by the center. You do want to press them. So when he sees this guard pull right here, we call it getting in the hip of the guard. So there's really two ways to play this. Either you can get upfield and follow that guard around if you have the athleticism to do that, which he does. And I think Alabama has schemed to protect their center against this play because you see Cam Robinson kind of sticking his arm to help the center. Or you can fight back against this down block and move down the defensive line, move down the line of scrimmage, and stop the power play, right around here. But as a player who's again raw and a little bit shaky fundamentally and mentally, he's just going to get upfield and create a huge space in the middle of the line of scrimmage, which doesn't get exploited on this play. But you have to have great gap discipline as an interior player, especially against teams that run these powers with the pulling guards. And that's something that he'll learn eventually because he has come a long way since his sophomore year in terms of recognition, in terms of understanding play technique. So I do think this is something that can get better for him. But right now, you can just see it's not clicking for him all the way. And you know, if we're talking about him as a top five pick, if you go turn on Joey Bosa's tape or even Kenny Clark's tape, these are guys that understand offensive scheme. They understand what's going to happen. They understand what's happening to them. They understand how it correlates to the whole defense. He's not even close to conceptually there yet. And that's what kind of scares me when you say, Nkemdiche is a top five pick. Athletically, oh, absolutely. Athletically, he's probably the first pick in the draft, but it's a more complex game than just combine numbers. And that's where it's a little bit murky where you feel more confident taking a guy like Joey Bosa because he's going to come in day one, he's going to get it, and he's going to produce right away. I think Nkemdiche is a little bit of a project in that aspect. And he's definitely a first round player because you're just not going to find 290-pound guys that can move like he can. But taking him in the top five, you're expecting him to produce right away. And I just don't know if he's ready for that. And we'll keep seeing more examples of that as we move on. And this is, again, if you're playing three technique like he is, and you're as an explosive as an athlete as he is, there's no reason at all for you to get reach blocked by the right tackle. That's borderline unacceptable. And while it doesn't have a great impact on the play, you still got to have good fundamentals and good awareness of what's happening. So let's run that back one more time. Comes out of his stance. I mean, I would assume that from the play we saw earlier or the plays we saw earlier where he's looking straight down as he comes out of his stance, I'm sure someone corrected that, on the sideline. But now he's coming straight up so you can read the play, and he's in a bad position to fight off blocks. Third down, I mean, they're passing the ball, and you can just see the explosion he has. He's a ridiculous athlete. His burst, look at his head compared to the rest of the defensive line. He blocks, he shocks back Cam Robinson, and he's just gonna bulldoze through. And a lot of people might say that he didn't get a pressure, but on these three-step drops, you're not getting there. So just get upfield, make your presence known. And at least here, he recognized that he's getting the double team. So he does. I mean, really, there's two ways you can take on a double team. You can either try to, you thrust your hips into the right, into the down blocking offensive lineman. So in this case, it'll be the right tackle for him, and grab the lineman you're lined up against, which will be the right guard for him, and really just try to make a huge pile at the line of scrimmage. Or you can try to get skinny and explode through the double team, which is what he tries to do here. But I mean, that was honestly just great technique by the Alabama offensive line to, you know, he the right guard gives a big enough shock where the tackle can almost reach him at that point before he goes on to the second level. But that was a better recognition, and he doesn't get knocked on his ass like before. So you can see progress even in game with how he's reading and reacting and recognizing things, but still not a finished product. Got to keep getting better. It looks like they had a stun here that just was poorly called by the Ole Miss defensive coordinator because everyone's going in, and then they just hit that outside lane. And, these are the plays where you look at him and you're like, oh my god, like variation is okay with defensive linemen, especially when you're projecting them, and especially when you have freak athletes like this. You just have to have tempered expectations because you'll see a lot of plays like the ones we saw before where he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing, and then you'll see a play like this where he gets off the line of scrimmage. He doesn't even play with great technique here, but he's too explosive. So the B gap is his, but he almost treats his gap as a two-way go. So you can either go B gap or A gap, and I'm sure that his assignment is to cover the B gap, and he does technically get reached here, but he's just too explosive up the field. Does a nice swim move over the guard, and then he's just shot out of a cannon. Brings down Kenyon Drake for a loss. So even when he's not conceptually sound, the athleticism lets him be a playmaker in the backfield. And it's a negative play. You'll take that all the time. The process may not have been perfect, but you're okay with the outcome. And at some point, when you're looking at defensive line prospects, at some point you have to acknowledge the results over the process sometimes, especially when guys have great athleticism. Like even if you go back and watch Aaron Donald as Pittsburgh tape, there were plays when he's not playing with um, great understanding of what the offensive line is doing, but he's just so explosive that you're going to take those big splash plays that you can create. And Nkemdiche, he's in that same mold. And this is an instance where you can see that he's still learning how to play interior. There's no real creativeness, no attempt to take on half the man. He's just trying to bulldoze down the offensive guard, and you know, just not strong enough yet. It hasn't grown into his body yet. But I believe he's only 20 years old or 21 years old, so he's gonna get stronger. He's gonna keep developing. And even here, this was poor pass rush lane integrity. From you can see from the other angle, three technique, and he ends up on the opposite side A gap, making it harder for his teammates to rush to. Or maybe that was a stunt. Might have been a little twist game. Well, if it wasn't a twist, it got treated like one. So that's up to interpretation. I'd call that a neutral play if I was scouting it. And this is much better, much much better. When you can count on him to be a run defender as what instead of a guy when you can count on him to be a consistent run defender instead of a guy who has to rely on these splash plays to make an impact, that's when you see the true value of what he can become. And look, he's still looking down a little bit, but he reacts to the guard much better. He tries to use his hands, he extends, he holds his ground. And while he does get pushed off the ball, 1 or 2 yards, he's not he's not on the ground, he's not getting bulldozed. He's making life a little bit difficult for the Alabama running back. Here's line up over the center. And when it's too easy, when you think it's too easy, it probably is. There's a point where you're pass rushing and you hit the oh shit, that was way too easy. But he doesn't have that kind of timer in his head. If you go back and watch that Kenny Clark video that I made last week, he hits that point. Kenny Clark here, he says, "Okay, that was ridiculously too easy. Let me retrace my steps and find the running back." But he's just a dog trying to get after the quarterback, and that just opens up huge screen lanes for him for Derrick Henry. So it's little things like understanding what the offense is doing, recognizing a good pass set versus getting let go for his screen, and that's something that he's still working with. And as someone who's moving from, like I've said before, moving from the exterior to the interior, it's a whole different lifestyle. It's a whole different set of rules. It's a whole different way you approach the game, and he's still learning that. And yeah, 2 years in as a defensive tackle, that's expected, but you would like to see a little bit better, a little bit more, a little bit more fundamental understanding, conceptual understanding of what the offensive line, what the offense is doing. It would just go a long way in helping people feel a little bit more sure about his draft status and what he can become in the future. And this is good. This is good technique. You hold your ground, extend your arms, play the right, play the right gap. Let's run that back one more time. Again, burst off the line of scrimmage is so impressive, so impressive. Holds his ground, extends his arm, plays the B gap. That's better. You see him even through the first quarter getting better at his assignments, getting better at understanding what he needs to do. And that's just right here again, just like the last play. He's we saw him when we saw him earlier in the quarter get reached by that right tackle. See him extend. You see the explosion in his hips, his butt, his arms, his upper body. He just twitched up, ridiculously athletic player. And he's in the position of power, position of control. He holds his gap, but defensive lineman on the other side got washed down. Again, look, he's got the tackle on skates. He's got his eyes in the backfield. He's in the position of control. Looks like he can tell a little bit as he's trying to disengage, but the process is good there. The process is good. you're only one guy on the field. Just because your process is great doesn't mean you're always going to make the play. And that's kind of what we're looking for when we scout these prospects at every position. Do they have a good enough process where they can make an impact early at the next level, and then from there on, it's athleticism and projection, and just looking at translatable traits. But the process is good there. Again, three technique, and this is just pure burst. He's too explosive a player where you can't if the guard's not going to chip him before the tackle has to reach. That's just almost asking too much of your tackle, and he's going to get upfield with ease. And then the play was on the other side, but that's just you just lit a fuse on a bomb in the middle of your line of scrimmage if you're not going to ask your guard to chip him before the tackle has to reach. And that's just all athleticism, all twitched up burst. He has it all, man. Looks like a little stun right here. And when you do the stunt, think about a defensive tackle in this scenario. At least when you're doing the stunt, think of his hands and his feet being connected with strings. And that's a weird way to think about it, but so when he's making this step inside to try to get from the B gap to the A gap in one move, think about his hands so his left hand and his left foot connected by a string, right hand and right foot connected by a string. So when he makes that first step with his left foot right here, he wants to bring his left hand with him and try to clear the body of and try to get in front of the guard on the way to the A gap. And then, so you can kind of see, you can't see the left arm, but you can see the left foot moving first. And then with that, after you do that, you want to bring the right foot attached to a string with your right arm and your right hand and clear and rip across. And you can see him trying to do that, but the leverage is, he has a little leverage issue here and he gets muddied up on the inside. But the process, again, very good. And again, this was just a poorly timed call by Ole Miss defensive coordinator. They're getting kind of crushed on these. Earlier we saw he got crushed on this inside on the on the inside zone play, the power play. So they're just trying to get ahead of it a little bit. But if you stunt inside and they call outside zone, you're just kind of fucked. Gets double teamed, and he's not anywhere close to technically sound enough to split through a double team on the pass rush, especially going against Cam Robinson, who looks like a feature stud at left tackle. Again, if you're not going to chip him, I mean, the right tackle has to hold him here. He's got no chance if the guard's not going to chip him first. Just too good of an athlete. You're going to get upfield. He's going to get upfield every single time. It's almost even not fair to ask the right tackle to do that. And here we go into the second quarter. You can see he's getting better. He's trying to read and react to the blocks. But it's almost to the point where he's getting timid a little bit in this game because he's so they were so concerned with stopping Derrick Henry. Like he had a solid amount of runs in the first half that you're almost treating run sets as pass sets. Or excuse me, the other way around, pass sets as run sets. And he just kind of tries to play it at the line of scrimmage first, and by the time you realize it's a pass play, it's just too late. Here you go again. Gets reached by the guard, and and you can see the lack of power he has to hold on and stand up to these double teams. Here we go again. B gap. If you're in the B gap and the guard is reaching you this way to get to your right shoulder, that's already a pretty easy block for the right guard. And then the tackle coming on to complete the double team on the down block, that's a really easy block. So you really, at this point, you have to kind of cut your losses. It's almost like a running back dancing in the backfield. And at some point, you know you're going to get hit for a loss. So when do you cut your losses? When do you stop trying to fight and just make a pile on the ground? So really, at this point, when he's in a position where his left foot is not even on the ground, right foot sliding back, he's got two guys pushing him here. This is a play where you can say, okay, I'm beat, I'm cutting my losses, but he still tries to fight and gets pushed, 3-4 yards down the field, almost 5. And this is again things that you learn as you play the position more, which he's still a newbie in that aspect, but he's getting better, and you can see throughout the game he's getting better. Looks like another interior stunt, and that's just a muddled mess of bodies. I can't even really tell what happened there. Off the edge against Kim Robinson, and you can even almost see the the comfortability he has rushing off the edge. This looks very natural. He's picking a side. He's saying, "All right, well, I'm going to split Cam Robinson in half because it's easier to take on half of Cam Robinson than the totality of Cam Robinson." He hits the rip, protects his chest from the right arm coming in, and now he's in the position where he has Cam Robinson's feet stacked. And if you're explosive, if you're an explosive player, and you get any offensive lineman in the position where their butt is not, you know, facing the quarterback. So like, look at the right tackle. His butt is facing the quarterback. Cam Robinson, his butt is facing the sideline. His feet are stacked. Now this is when you dip, turn on the jets, and run that hoop drill that you practice so often that you run so often in practice. And that's crazy. He's a 290-pound defensive lineman bending the edge. And look at that lean, look at that burst. He's got Cam Robinson beat off the edge. And it's almost similar to the way that Sheldon Richardson used to play coming out of Missouri. When they would put him they put him on the edge in rushing situation, and he was just a freaky athlete too in the way that he could bend the edge and get around the corner and get to the quarterback. And Nkemdiche's in that same mold. Again, it looks so natural. He doesn't fall through completely with his arm, but look at that lean that a 290, 295-pound player can have. And then the burst to keep going through contact, that just looked way too natural for him. 3 technique on the goal line. They're running straight at him. Another inside stunt, but by Ole Miss, and he held his ground pretty well, well enough for Tony Connor to get there for the tackle for loss. Yep. And again, just like the one where he split the double team before, you can get away with some poor gap discipline when you're that explosive up the field. This is a wide receiver coming across on on a on a on an end around. Look how the ball is snapped. The ball isn't even in the quarterback. The ball just gets to the quarterback's hands, and he's past. His head is past the line of scrimmage. His shoulders are past the line of scrimmage. And look at the lean in his body. He's in the position to attack, to explode upfield. Clears his chest, gets upfield with ease, and he brings down a wide receiver in the open field. Just stupid athleticism. Yep, just get upfield, and it's too easy. Guys that size shouldn't be able to move in space like that. Line up over the center here, gets double teamed, and he's not ready. He's still learning how to take on double teams in the run game, let alone trying to split them head on versus a pass. Three technique again, and this is beautiful play recognition by him. The guards will take you to the ball. In almost every situation, the guards will take you to the ball. So he's got that first step down pat. He's got the snap anticipation down pat. Head up. He's reading where the guards are going. He's reading where the offensive line is going. And he's able to get his body in that B gap and chase down the line of scrimmage as a pursuit player. And he's keeping up with the running back to the sideline, and that's an impressive display of speed right there too. Let's watch that one more time. Let's run it back one more time. First off the line of scrimmage with that burst, gets in the B gap, keeps control of the B gap down the line of scrimmage, stays in a good pursuit angle, traps him on the line of on the sideline. I mean, you can't even ask for anything better than that, especially on those stretch plays. And again, they're doubling him because they know he's too explosive for a lot of guards to handle. And Alabama, they have pretty slow guards, so whenever they get into these deep passing situations where it's 5 and 7 step drops, they're going to try to double him, and that's what they do. And this is fun. Line up in the backfield, takes a snap, and doesn't get there. I mean, even the fact that they would trust him with the ball on the goal line out of a wildcat snap, pretty much. Again, keeps control of his gap, and look at. I mean, it doesn't take him any time to accelerate up the field. And you can see the gap discipline from So we're at 6:43 in the second quarter. The gap discipline from the very first play to here is much improved. And the recognition of what's going on is much improved. And then you still have that ridiculous burst and crazy athleticism to shoot up the field and bring him down for a loss. That's great football. And he makes it look so easy. So like when you see plays like this, when NFL teams see a play like this, they're going, okay, it's there. Now it's up to us to harness it and bring it out of him and make him more consistent with that. And if they can cut the bad plays of sloppy technique and get more plays where he's doing this, he's commanding his gap down the line of scrimmage, he's moving with the ball, and then he sees a time to attack and get upfield. And that's a first pick in the draft type of play. That's a future All Pro type of play. But it's littered with too many plays where you just where it looks like he doesn't know what's going on or he doesn't know what he's doing. And that's kind of the big mystery with him. What are you getting from him? Are you getting the guy who looks like Baby Sue, Baby McCoy, or are you getting the guy who has no clue what he's doing, but he's the best athlete on the field? And again, look how comfortable he is rushing off the edge. I mean, he gets washed, but just the burst and the ability to bend his hips and sink a little bit for a 300-pounder is ridiculous. Here he is, come off the edge again. And even just to be able to run that hoop at 290 pounds is it's crazy. It's cool to see that he bulked up about 30, 35 pounds without losing the athleticism that made him such a crazy high school prospect in the first place. You know, if he gets in the hands of a guy like Rob Marinelli, he's going to be a very special player. And there it is. There's that athleticism again. So he hits that double team. He's not fighting through this mess. I mean, this is probably a combined like 650 pounds between Alphonse Taylor and Ryan Kelly, the center. So you spin away, and at this point, he's got the feet stacked, offensive line's feet stacked. He's in a position to attack, to accelerate upfield, gets in Coker's face. Yeah, I don't know what the hell that is. That's just an awful rep right there. Looks like maybe he was expecting a double team. I don't know what that is. He got bailed out by a horrible throw right there. And then this is kind of where he reverts back. You know, because Alabama's not going to they're not going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. They're too well coached for that. So when you get to a point where okay, we're trying to run these zone plays, but he's just knifing to the backfield every single time. Eventually, you're gonna have to put a hand on him with the double team right there. So you get Cam Robinson and the left guard kind of bullying him back, and that's again a point where you need to cut your losses and get on the ground before you just make things worse for the before you make things worse for the linebackers in the secondary. I mean, he makes a good effort by trying to come across, but once you feel that pressure from Cam Robinson on your hip, and you're in a position like this where you don't have any power, you're getting double teamed. You got to cut your losses and fall down. Here he's lined up over the center in the shade. And the pad level, not great here. And he's right now, he's a player where if he's going head up against somebody like he is at the center here, it's all got to go right for him. He's a little bit slow off the ball for his standards. He's still miles ahead of everybody else. But his back is arched already. He's not underneath the center. The center is underneath him. His head's down. His arms are outside the center's arms. Ryan Kelly he's considered a draftable prospect, so he's going to win his fair share of reps too. And he gets his hands in Nkemdiche's chest. He's got him on skates, and he just bullies him down the field. And he does a good job here just standing up this double team. He comes out low. He has good pad level. But, even we talk about the athleticism as he has as a 290-pound defensive tackle, but even that's pretty light, for for an interior player. So he's not going to win every double team. He's not going to win a lot of double teams. Gets his head on the wrong side of the guard here. 3 technique. You got to keep control of that B gap. And he's more concerned with getting upfield. All right, I'm just going to get upfield no matter how it affects the rest of my team. Or I don't know if that's his intent, but that's what it's doing. So he's on the wrong side of the guard here. And it's so tough to just run through a wall of guys like that. And luckily, they were running a trick play wide receiver, pass. So it's not really a detriment to anybody here, but you got to keep control of your gap. You got to move with the line. You got to move with the offensive line down the line of scrimmage and just be ready to burst upfield and attack whenever you need to. But you can't attack to you can't be so willing to get upfield and be so willing to be aggressive and make plays in the backfield that you forget your simple fundamentals. You forget your simple scheme assignments, and that's what's happening to him sometimes. And that can be coached out, but it's a little bit of a first instinct for him right now. So, are we willing to take these bad plays where he's going to be a liability to your base defense as a top 5 pick? And that's the questions that NFL teams have to ask. It's the question draftniks have to ask when they evaluate Nkemdiche. Are the negative plays worth the positive plays sprinkled in? And, that's a major question with him right now. If it's too easy, it probably is. If it's too easy, it probably is. I mean, he hasn't been beating guards and he hasn't been beating the interior that easily all night. So why would it suddenly just become, a piece of cake? You got to be able to read and recognize those screens. Something that he's still learning how to do. Three-step drop, just make your presence known. But again, head was down, not really looking where he's going. 3 technique. And this takes some situational awareness too. Think about where you are in the game. Think about the chances you can take in the game. Alabama's down 17-3 right before the half. It's 2nd and 10. They have one timeout left. These are things that you have to know as a pass rusher and as a run stopper, and especially as a guy, again, that we're going to talk about as a potential top 5 pick. Situational awareness is huge. There's no reason that he should be timid to burst upfield and try to make a sack or even make a play in the backfield, because here in this situation, you have a little bit of a cushion when you're up 2 scores. Your offense is rolling. Your defense is playing pretty well. There's no reason for him to be this timid and kind of read what's going on. Even though it is a 3-step drop, I'd like to see him burst up the field and understand you have a cushion, you have time, and they're desperate. As the number 2 team in the nation, understand what's going on. And again, these double teams are just a huge problem for him right now. And that's just a phenomenal play by Jake Coker to get that first down. These double teams, man, it's something that he's going to have to work on, because if if NFL teams end up fearing him, or if I mean if what am I trying to say? If he's going to be an impact player that you expect from day one to be that guy, he's going to see his fair share of double teams, and right now he's not even close to ready. And even here, while he's not making a huge impact on the play, you can see that the strength and explosiveness in his upper body to shock that center back, get his hands in his face. He's still a work in progress. Still very much so a work in progress. But you can see the potential rewards when you watch him. Jesus Christ. And that's going to wrap this up. That was the first half of Robert Nkemdiche's game versus Alabama. And as you can see, he does have the potential to be a guy that's going to. He does have the potential to be one of these next superstar defensive linemen in the mold of Sue, in the mold of McCoy, Wilkerson, Sheldon Richardson. But the inconsistencies are there. And the inability to do certain things and recognize certain things that elite defensive linemen do, they still, he's still lacking in those areas. And really, he's a gamble if you're going to take him in the top 5 picks. You just need to understand the risk that goes on with that. You need to make sure he's not going to be at the focal point of your defensive line when he comes in. And you need to be patient with him, because he's going to make some dope, boneheaded mistakes, but also make some incredible splash plays in the same breath. And that's what we're seeing here. He's a player that's conceptually not there yet, mentally not there yet, but athletically ridiculously ahead of the curve. Um, so that's pretty much my assessment of this first half of this game, and I do think that it encompasses very well who he is as a player. He's he's a freak athlete who should blow up the combine, but the game is not. It's moving a little bit too fast for him right now. Uh, so that's going to wrap it up here. Thanks to Draft Breakdown, as always, for having a great library of clips. Thanks to my man Rob Donaldson for cutting up this game tape. And I will see you guys next time.